light I like to set up first is the backlight. I don't know why I like to start with the backlight. It's just my personal preference and it works for me. Don't confuse the backlight with a background light. We'll set up a background light later on in the video to light the bookcase, desk, and wall. The backlight is strictly for lighting the hair and shoulders of the subject to create a defining edge to help visually separate them from the background. Here's an excellent example of a poorly done shot that could have benefited by having a backlight. Notice how his hair just disappears into the blue cloth, which, by the way, is also placed too close to his head so it's in focus and there's no separation. In addition, as we'll talk about later, the key light is coming from the wrong side and the camera isn't leveled. It's a good example of what not to do. Normally, the best position for the backlight is almost directly opposite from the camera. If you draw an imaginary line from the lens, through the subject's head, and beyond, the backlight generally ought to be placed close to this line, but a little off axis so that it strikes both shoulders equally. Obviously, to get the light into this position, you can't just put it on a regular light stand because it will be seen in the shot. That's why we've brought along the convertible boom stand. It can be set up just outside the frame and then swung in to suspend one of our small pro lights at just the right spot. Be sure to use a sandbag if the stand seems out of balance. Does it matter which side the stand is placed? No, but it's a lot easier to put the stand out of the frame if you place it to the side that's opposite of the direction the subject will be facing. This is especially important if you're shooting in widescreen. For example, if Jamie is going to be facing the camera's left, then the boom stand should be placed to the right side of the frame. There are a couple of 250 watt Lowell Pro lights in our kit, and one of them is outfitted with a snoot. That's the one we want to use for the backlight. The snoot will narrow down the beam and create a nice circle of light right where we want it, which is on Jamie's shoulders and hair and nowhere else. A snoot is a great way to control the beam and prevent the light from causing flares in the camera lens and spraying all around the room onto the ceiling, the walls, or other places we don't want it shining. Good lighting is all about controlling light, putting it right where you want it and keeping it away from the areas where you don't want it. That's one reason why you don't want to use umbrellas on your lights, because while they do soften the light, they also throw light everywhere around the room without any means of control. We're also going to add a dimmer to the backlight so we can precisely control the intensity. We don't want the light too strong or Jamie will have an artificial halo effect. Using a dimmer is an easy way to get it just right. If we didn't have a dimmer, then putting some gel or diffusion over the light could help, but it's not nearly as convenient as using a dimmer. The potential drawback of using a dimmer is that they tend to change the color of the light to a warmer hue as the intensity is lessened. But that effect on a backlight doesn't bother me. I usually like a warmer backlight, so I don't mind. The point of the backlight is just to separate the subject from the background and give your 2D image more of a 3D feel, and subtlety works best. Don't overdo it. The boom stand also makes it real easy to raise or lower the height of the backlight to get the look you want. You can experiment and see what works best. Sometimes high is good, and sometimes a lower angle works better. Either way can be fine, but I usually use 45 degrees as the default angle for the backlight.